Let me tell you something strange about people who have few but deep friends. We live in a world that measures connection by numbers, followers, contacts, party invites, group chats that never sleep. The culture tells us that popularity equals love, that a full social calendar means a full heart, but maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've always had just 2 or 3 people who truly know you, and maybe no one has ever explained to you why that isn't loneliness, it's precision. If you want to understand what you feel without labels, and find words to explain yourself without justifying, subscribe. Here we translate psychology into relief, not diagnosis. Because there's a difference between being alone and being selective. Between isolation and knowing that not every hand deserves to hold yours. This isn't about self-help or fixing something broken. This is about recognizing that some souls were built for depth, not breadth. And that's not a flaw in your design. The world might call you distant, picky, hard to know. They might say you're closed off, or that you don't know how to let people in. But what if it's the opposite? What if having few but deep friends is actually a quiet form of emotional intelligence, a radical act of self-preservation in a culture drowning in shallow connection? What if it's not about fear of intimacy, but about refusing to dilute it? People like you don't collect relationships. You cultivate them. You understand that real intimacy isn't built in crowded rooms or through constant availability. It's built in the silences between words, in showing up when it matters, in being known completely by someone who chose to stay. That's not introversion. That's not social anxiety. That's clarity about what friendship actually means and the courage to wait for it. We live in a culture that rewards the opposite, where connection has become performance, and friendship is measured by response time and visible affection. Social media turned relationships into content, intimacy into proof. You're supposed to have a best friend group, a tight-knit crew, endless plans. Presence has become about being seen with people, not actually seeing them. But maybe the real loneliness is having 50 friends and still feeling unknown. This creates an impossible pressure, especially for people like you. You feel the weight of expectation. Be more social, say yes more often, expand your circle, network, connect. The culture whispers that something's wrong with you if you're not constantly surrounded. That choosing solitude means you're missing out. That deep friendship with just a few people is somehow less than having surface-level connection with many. It's exhausting. This constant sense that your natural rhythm is somehow inadequate. But here's what they don't tell you. The human brain wasn't designed for infinite connection. Psychologists have studied this. There's actually a cognitive limit to how many meaningful relationships we can maintain. It's called Dunbar's number, and it suggests we can only handle about 5 genuinely close relationships at a time. Beyond that, connection becomes maintenance, obligation, performance. Your nervous system knows this. It's why large gatherings drain you. It's why you'd rather have coffee with one person than drinks with 10. So when you choose depth over breadth, you're not being antisocial, you're being honest about your capacity. You're honoring the fact that real friendship requires attention, presence, emotional energy, resources that aren't infinite. You're refusing to perform connection just to avoid the discomfort of others' judgment. And in a world that confuses busyness with belonging, that's not just preference, that's wisdom. Psychologists call this selective attachment. It's the ability to form deep, secure bonds with a small number of people while maintaining healthy boundaries with everyone else. In other words, it's knowing the difference between being friendly and being friends. It's understanding that intimacy is not a door you leave open for anyone who walks by. It's a key you give to people who've proven they won't lose it. This comes from what's called an internal locus of control. Your sense of worth doesn't depend on how many people like you or want to be around you. It comes from within. You don't need constant social validation because you've built a life that feels true even in silence. You don't measure your value by party invites or group chat activity. You measure it by the quality of presence you can offer and receive. That's not coldness, that's congruence, when your inner world and outer life actually match. People with deep friendships also tend to have what researchers call high emotional granularity. You can distinguish between loneliness and solitude, between connection and codependence, between intimacy and enmeshment. You know that being with someone who doesn't truly see you is lonelier than being alone. You understand that saying no to surface-level socializing isn't rejection. It's protecting your energy for relationships that actually nourish you. This is emotional self-regulation at its finest. And here's what makes this powerful. Studies show that people with fewer but deeper friendships report higher life satisfaction, lower anxiety, and stronger sense of meaning. Because depth creates safety. Knowing you can call someone at 3 in the morning and they'll answer, that's worth more than 100 acquaintances who like your posts. Being fully known by 3 people is more sustaining than being partially known by 30. It's not avoidance, it's investment in what actually matters. Of course, it doesn't always come from peace. Sometimes it's protection, sometimes it's fear dressed up as preference. Maybe you learned early that people leave, that trust gets broken, that opening up means getting hurt. Maybe you keep your circle small because it's safer that way. Fewer people to disappoint you, fewer chances to be misunderstood. And that's okay, because even fear is a form of care. Even walls are built to protect something tender. There are moments when you wonder if you're missing out, when you see groups of friends laughing together and feel that old, familiar ache. Am I doing this wrong? Should I be trying harder? You watch people move through the world with ease, collecting friends like souvenirs, and you feel the weight of your own slowness. The way it takes you so long to trust, to open, to let someone pass the outer rooms of yourself. Sometimes it feels less like a choice and more like a limitation. And sometimes the loneliness is real, because having deep friends doesn't mean you always have available friends. Your few people have their own lives, their own demands. There are nights when you need someone and they're not there, and you feel the thinness of your safety net. Moments when you realize that putting all your emotional eggs in 2 or 3 baskets means those baskets matter desperately. The fear of losing them becomes heavier because there's no crowd to cushion the fall. But here's the truth, they don't tell you about vulnerability. It's supposed to be scary. Depth requires risk. Real friendship means giving someone the power to hurt you and trusting they won't. And maybe your caution isn't weakness. Maybe it's respect for the weight of intimacy. Maybe you move slowly because you understand what you're offering. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world, and knowing that isn't dysfunction, it's discernment. Even when it's born from pain, it's still a form of self-knowledge, and that matters. Having few but deep friends isn't withdrawal, it's curation. It's not being difficult, it's having standards. It's not loneliness, it's learning the difference between empty and quiet. You're not avoiding connection. You're refusing to mistake noise for intimacy, presence for depth, knowing someone's name for actually knowing them. Think of it this way. Some people are rivers, wide, always moving, touching many shores. You're a well, deep, still, life-giving to those who know where to find you. Neither is better, but only one sustains during drought. Only one offers water that doesn't just pass through, but actually quenches. The world needs both, but it only celebrates one. And that's not your problem to fix. Choosing depth over breadth means accepting that you'll never be everyone's person. You won't have the biggest birthday party or the most wedding invites. You won't be in every group chat or know everyone's business. But you will be the person someone calls when their world falls apart. You will be the friend who remembers not just birthdays, but the small stories, the private fears, the dreams they've never said out loud. You will know and be known in a way that crowd pleasers will spend their whole lives chasing. This isn't about being better than people who have large friend groups. It's about honoring your own architecture. Some of us are built for festivals, Others are built for late-night kitchen conversations. Some need many mirrors to see themselves. Others need just one or two that reflect truly. You can say this to people: I don't have many friends, but the ones I have know me completely. And that's worth more to me than being liked by everyone. That's not defense, that's clarity. That's knowing who you are and refusing to apologize for your depth. A person like this once tried to be different. They said yes to every invitation, joined group activities, forced themselves into crowded spaces where everyone seemed so comfortable. They smiled through dinners with acquaintances, laughed at the right moments, performed the dance of casual friendship. And at the end of each night, driving home alone, they felt emptier than before they left, not because the people were bad, but because nothing that happened touched them. They were surrounded and still unseen. When they finally stopped fighting their nature, something shifted. They let friendships fade that were only sustained by effort and guilt. They stopped responding to group chats that felt like obligations. They protected their weekends, their evenings, their energy. And yes, the silence was uncomfortable at first. That space where all the surface connections used to be. But slowly, that space filled differently. The two friends who remained became clearer, closer, more real. Conversations went deeper. Silence between them felt comfortable instead of awkward. They could call at any hour. They could say the unsayable. Studies show that people who prioritize deep friendships over large social networks report higher emotional resilience and lower rates of depression. They recover faster from setbacks because they have people who actually know their story, not just their status updates. But the most beautiful part isn't the research, it's the lived experience. It's texting someone after months of silence and picking up exactly where you left off. It's being with someone who knows your tells, your patterns, your unspoken fears. It's the relief of not having to explain yourself because they already understand. This isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about finding your people in it and knowing that 2 or 3 true friends is not a small number. It's everything. It's coming home after years of performing connection and finally feeling known. Not by many, but completely. And that makes all the difference. It's not about closing yourself off. It's about choosing when to open. You can be warm, kind, present with many people while reserving your deepest self for a chosen few. You can enjoy acquaintances, colleagues, friendly faces without confusing them with intimacy. You can say, I like people, I just need my closest friendships to go deep. I'd rather have 2 friends I can call at midnight than 20 I only see at parties. That's not coldness. That's self-awareness. There's language for this that doesn't require justification. When someone asks why you're not more social, you don't owe them your history or your psychology. You can simply say, I invest deeply in my friendships, so I keep my circle small. When they suggest you should get out more, meet more people, expand your network, you can smile and say, I'm content with the connections I have. You don't have to convince anyone that your way of loving is valid. You just have to know it yourself. This distinction matters because the world will constantly try to pathologize your preference. They'll call it fear of intimacy when it's actually respect for it. They'll call it social anxiety when it's social selectivity. They'll suggest you're missing out when you're actually protecting what matters most. Having language that honors your truth helps you stand firm. Not defensive, not apologetic, just clear about what friendship means to you and what it requires. And here's what you can offer the people in your small circle. Tell them they matter, tell them why. Not in grand gestures, but in the small noticing, remembering what they told you 3 months ago, showing up when they need you, making time even when life gets busy. Deep friendship isn't passive. It's active, intentional, chosen every day. When you have few friends, each one becomes a practice in presence. And they feel it. They know they're not just a name on a list. They're your people. And that's a gift most people spend their whole lives searching for. Not every absence is emptiness. Sometimes it's where the soul learns what it actually needs. Sometimes it's the clearing away of noise so you can finally hear your own voice and recognize the voices that truly echo it. And maybe having few but deep friends isn't about limitation. Maybe it's about knowing that love isn't measured in quantity, but in the ability to be completely yourself with another person and find that they're still there. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who don't know you. And there's a kind of fullness that comes from being known by just a few who truly do. The world confuses these things constantly. It thinks connection is addition. The more people, the less alone you'll be. But you've learned subtraction is sometimes the path to belonging. That removing what's shallow makes room for what's deep. That the right 2 or 3 people can fill spaces that 100 never could. What part of you has the world never understood, but that, in silence and in the company of your few true friends, you learned to respect? What did you stop apologizing for when you realized your depth wasn't a flaw, but a feature? Maybe it was the way you need time between social interactions to feel like yourself again. Maybe it was understanding that you can love people without needing to see them constantly. Maybe it was accepting that your heart works differently, and that's not something to fix. If this video gave you words to understand what you've always felt, subscribe. Here we speak about what the world never named. But you've always known. Because some of us were never meant to know everyone. We were meant to know a few people entirely. And in a world that mistakes visibility for connection, that's not isolation. That's devotion. That's choosing quality in an age of quantity. That's building a life where friendship isn't a performance, but a homecoming. And maybe that small circle of yours, those 2, 3, 4 people who actually see you, maybe that's not too few. Maybe that's everything. The truth about people who have few but deep friends is this. They understand something the world keeps forgetting, that intimacy cannot be mass-produced, that being known takes time, attention, presence, things you cannot multiply infinitely without losing their essence. They've made peace with the fact that their hearts don't work on scale, and they've stopped apologizing for it. You're not broken because you don't have a large friend group. You're not missing some social gene that makes connection easy and effortless. You're simply someone who knows that friendship is not about how many people show up to your birthday, but about who stays when the party's over, who answers at 3 in the morning, who remembers not just your stories, but the silences between them. You've chosen roots over branches, and there's a quiet strength in that the world will never celebrate, but you'll always feel. So the next time someone suggests you need more friends or questions why your circle is so small, remember this. Gardens don't apologize for tending fewer plants with greater care. Wells don't explain why they go deep instead of wide. And you don't need to justify why you'd rather be completely known by 2 people than partially known by 20. Your way of loving isn't less. It's just concentrated. And anyone who's ever experienced that kind of friendship knows it's not scarcity. It's abundance in its truest form. Not every heart is meant to hold a crowd. Some are built for sanctuary, small sacred spaces where a chosen few can rest completely. And maybe that's exactly what the world needs more of. People who know the difference between being liked and being loved, between being surrounded and being seen. You are not alone in your depth. You're just selective about who gets to reach it. And that, more than anything else, is a form of self-respect this loud world desperately needs to learn.